Hello everyone, it is time for this week's live stream. James, you're here. I need to speak with you about your order. And gotta figure out everything was fine. I walk away and I come back and I'm gone. All right. Jeez. There I am. Here I am with a nice green screen. That is not how it looked 40 seconds ago. Every single time. All right. What can we do here? All right. Well, let me fix myself first somehow. I gotta figure out what the heck I did. So annoying. I was there. Literally, I was there. Wait, could this be it? Here I am. All right. That's better. Jeez, what a beating. Why is it? Literally, I was like, okay, everything's perfect. Hit the intro. Boom, I disappear. Oh, you know what? Let me hide myself again. I have to go get my Coke out of the freezer. 1 second. And I am back. It's me, I'm here. All right, so Jeremiah is the one that came up with this week's topic. He said, I want you to talk about cyanobacteria, and we haven't talked about it in a whole year. And I thought, all right, well, we haven't talked about it in a year, then I guess that's a good topic to get into. And it is a valuable topic that we are all going to run into cyanobacteria in our aquariums at some point. And cyanobacteria is a very common bacteria that exists in freshwater, saltwater, and brackish water. It's everywhere. So it's normal, it happens, and it's oftentimes seasonal. It happens to a lot of people. You can't blame it on a salt mix. You can't blame it on lack of water changes. I mean, there's certain things people will recommend. The default is increase your flow, check your lighting, and reduce your nutrients. I always hear that, but it's bacteria. And it exists all the time. The only time you don't like looking at it is when it's red, when it's visible and it's on the sand bed. But the rest of the time, it's invisible. You don't care that it's in your tank the whole time. So the solution could be to increase your flow. I mean, there are some people that don't have enough power heads in their aquarium and the water's just a little bit too slow moving, and so things aren't staying nice and tidy and clean. The other part would be that your nutrients could be a little bit high, but usually higher nutrients creates algae, and cyanobacteria is bacteria. It's in the algae family. I mean, people think of it as the blue-green algae, but it is a bacteria that is now blooming. It is now either green or blue or red or maybe dark brown. If you're using a lot of blue light, it might look black to your eyes, so turn off the blues and turn on the white so you can actually see what's in your aquarium so you know if you need to handle it or not. Caitlin's Reef recently had good hints of cyanobacteria in her tank, and I wanted to go ahead and get that cleaned out, and so I did. Here is what her tank looked like a week ago. Oh, why can't I not just go away? Sorry. Poof. So here was her tank. It wasn't bad. There was this hint of brown stuff on the sand bed, which is actually a combination of a few things. But down inside the zoanthids, there was like these filaments of red coming off of it. That cluster of algae on the left had cyano leading up to the Nero 5 pump, and it was just time to treat the tank. And so that's exactly what I did, and I treated the tank with Red Cyano RX, and then this is what it looked like 4 days later. All better. Problem solved. So you should not feel like your tank is going to need to go through a big long thing. You can solve these problems in minimal amount of time. I would just encourage you to go ahead and treat the tank now. Why is it? We are now locked in forever. We're in front of Caitlin's reef today, guys. I didn't do a video of that one, sorry. Let's try this. Yeah, let's try this now. Yeah, it's weird. Hang on, I got it. There we go. There's the reef. All right. People that wait a long time or think I'm scared of putting chemicals in my tank are really doing themselves a disservice, and they're discouraging themselves with their aquarium every single day until they solve it. It's so much easier. Just take something like this and put it in your tank and be done. This product here is cheap. I think it's less than $20, and there's a whole bunch in here. This one box can treat 400 gallons. So if you have to treat your tank twice a year with one of these and solve the problem in a matter of 4 or 5 days, totally do it. Rather than suffering through this weird blanket of stuff that's smothering corals, that looks ugly, that is irritating you nonstop. And no matter how much you siphon it out, it just keeps coming back. And every single night it goes away, and every single day it comes back because it's photosynthetic. It literally activates in the light. And then when the tank is dark, it looks like it went away. It didn't. It's just dormant again. It's back to sleep. It's invisible. And then as soon as the lights come on again, it's going to be present. Now, instead of using this, what else could you use? You could use ChemiClean. I've been recommending that for a super long time. ChemiClean or Red Cyanobacteria, for all I know, are the exact same ingredient, just different companies that make it. And it literally works. It is the one product that I recommend on a regular basis. And I don't worry about recommending it. It's literally something that will solve your problem. On very rare occasions, out of all the years I've been in the hobby, there's been 3 or 4 or 5 people that had a weird disaster using a product like ChemiClean or Red Cyanobacteria to get rid of cyano, and that's where their whole tank just turned pink. And the reason it turned pink is because the tank was filled with cyano and they did nothing to remove it before they treated the tank. So if your tank is just covered in this stuff and you're like, I've tried everything else, I'm finally going to do what Mark says, you need to siphon out as much as you can first, so you only have a little bit left to treat the tank for. And then you're going to turn off your protein skimmer, you're going to turn off UV, you're going to remove any carbon, and then just put the medication in your tank and let it sit there for 3 days. And that's it. After 72 hours, you can do a 25% water change, and your tank looks better. Now, if for some reason after 72 hours it's not gone yet, you can put in another dose of this product, the same amount used the first time, do it again and wait 2 more days, and after that it should be completely eradicated. Then you do your water change and you get your skimmer back into operation, and boom, Bob's your uncle. It's just not a hard thing to do, and there's no reason why you should have to suffer with this problem more than a matter of days. So, what I'm describing to you here is solved in 3 to 5 days versus waiting 3 months to 9 months, hoping it'll go away on its own, which is kind of depressing. It's depressing for me to think you're going to wait and be scared of this product that does the job so well. Now, the downside is that it can lower the oxygen level in your tank, so the brands recommend putting in an air stone in your aquarium to add oxygen. Others have been saying this forever, and I've been saying forever not to do it. They say take the collection cup off your protein skimmer and just let the skimmer overflow in the sump. I tell them take the skimmer out of the sump and go clean it. Literally put in citric acid for a day, scrub it down, get it brand new and beautiful again, and then, when it's time to turn your skimmer back on, you'll have a nice, clean skimmer because you have to clean it once a year anyway. So just do it. The skimmer does not add oxygen to the water. People keep calling it that, but it really doesn't. Yes, it's full of bubbles, but it's not adding air. It's not adding oxygen because it doesn't have an oxygen input like an O2 tank would do. It is literally pushing out carbon dioxide, but what it's doing is it's bubbling and overflowing the skimmer. It's actually spattering all over the inside of your sump. It is spattering your woodwork, your cabinetry, everything, electronics. I don't recommend that. Take the skimmer out, wash it, clean it, turn it, put it back into place and wait. If you like, you can put the skimmer on something taller to lift it up 2 or 3 inches, because when you finally turn your skimmer back on, it's going to look like milk inside the body because of the medicine that was in the water, and that skimmer is going to want to overflow the collection cup like crazy. So lifting it up 2 or 3 inches could be the first step of getting the skimmer back under control. Then you want to adjust the protein skimmer to the lowest point possible so that the water in the protein, like here's our protein skimmer, and we want the water line to be as low in the body as you can get it, and just let this all be foam. That's fine. And then as the collection cup drain it into a nearby bucket or trash can or whatever it is you've got that fits nearby. And then as fast as it's wasting skimmate, just put in new salt water to make up for it. There's a couple of solutions for that. One would be to literally use salt water as top off. As your skimmer is draining water into a collection reservoir of some kind, you're literally replenishing salt water nonstop as quick as it's coming out. And that's, again, doing even more of a water change. So when I did my reef 2 years ago, I treated it for cyano, and then my protein, and I changed 150 gallons of water, which should have been enough, but the protein skimmer ended up pulling out another 50 gallons of water, which I just replaced with new 50-gallon salt water. I ended up changing a total of 200 gallons of my aquarium, and then the skimmer was back under control. And I got the skimmer under control within a matter of hours, not days or weeks. And people will say, yeah, my protein skimmer went crazy after using a product like this, and so I just turned it off. I just unplugged it. I gave up. And that's not the solution. The solution is to raise the skimmer up, let the cup drain, replace whatever it pulls out with nice clean salt water, and get it under control in a matter of, 3, 6, 8 hours? And that's it. You're back to operations, your tank looks great, your skimmer's operating like it should, and everything is good. But if you're terrified of this stuff, you have one other option that can work, and that's to turn off all the lights on the aquarium for 3 days. And you may lose a few corals doing that, but the tank will look fantastic. And I don't mean wrap the tank in cardboard or in a plastic bag or under a blanket or anything crazy. I just literally unplug the lights for 3 days or set them to off and just don't run them for 3 days. And then after 3 days, when I did this, I did it one time with my 280-gallon reef, and I was nervous, but I was turning on the light in the room so the fish could see when it was time to feed them that evening. I didn't turn on the lights on the tank. And each day I took the collection cup off my skimmer, and I dumped it out, and I wiped it down like I always do, and I put it back on. And on the third day, my skimmer pulled out all this sludge. It was like this much in the collection cup of just filth. It was crazy how much it pulled out. And what I believe it was pulling out was the dead cyano that had finally given up. After no light for 3 days, it just completely died. The skimmer pulled it out, and on the fourth day, I turned on the lights, and all 4 walls of my aquarium were pristine, as if I'd cleaned the glass, because all the algae had been on the glass died as well. And my skimmer pulled out even more skimmate on the 4th day. And I lost a couple of frags, a couple of 1-inch frags, SPS corals died, but the entire reef looked fantastic, and I felt like it was totally worth it. But if you don't want to do the lights out thing, then ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX are completely safe to use in your aquarium, and will make your experience so much better. And this is just it's just my channel. You can do what you want, but I'm telling you, this is something that is worth doing and not something to be scared of. And don't let people talk you out of it, because they will. They will always say, oh my God, you shouldn't do that. Never use chemicals. Everything we use in our tank is a chemical of some kind, all the way down to the atoms. So it's not something to be terrified of. Now, I wanted to show you something else. I'm going to try to hold this up on camera. We'll see if it works with a green screen situation. This right here is a product from Fritz. And spoiler alert, Fritz is my new sponsor, even though I haven't announced it yet. So that announcement's coming. But anyway, I got a bottle of Fritz Zyme 460 to lower the nitrates in my tank. And I said I need a gallon because I have a big tank. And I put in 90 milliliters in my tank, and I turned off my skimmer for 2 days, and then I turned the skimmer back on. And then a week later, I put 90 milliliters in my tank and turned off the skimmer for 2 days, and then after that, I turned the skimmer back on. And I did this 3 times in 4 weeks. I didn't do it 4 times in 4 weeks, and I want to show you the difference. So I've got something else to show you. Let me hide myself here so I don't land on top of the other scene. So here is the difference. On the left, you can see my nitrate test kit was in the deep reds, probably 80 ppm. And 30 days later, my nitrates are measuring around 20. So in a 30-day period, I didn't do anything else with my tank except use the Fritz Zyme 460. And I went from 80 to 20 just using this product, which I'm sure it's a chemical. It's a bacteria of some kind too. And I think it's replenishing. And I actually put it in my tank again this week, and I waited 2 days with the skimmer off. I need to test my nitrate. I didn't have enough time to test it again today, but I'm kind of hoping that it's even lower than what's in this right picture on the screen right now. So there you go. That's kind of a cool thing to share with you, huh? I'm very pleased that it worked. I wanted it to work. I wanted this stuff right here to work so that when somebody asks me, does it work? I can say yes, because any of these products I use to remove nitrate, my ultimate goal is to say it totally worked. It is a great option, and I highly recommend it. Like I did with the Red Cyan RX, like I do with Phosphate RX. So it looks like I'll be able to say the same thing about Fritz 460, and I'm very excited about that, because if it didn't work, what was I going to say? I mean, I would just say nothing. So I'm really happy I can say something good came of it, and I didn't do water changes. I didn't do anything else that's special. I literally just let it do its job, and they said it would work. I think the reason you don't hear more people talking about it is because it's a slow burn. That was a 30-day duration from beginning point to end point, or between the two pictures. And in that 30 days, I mean, that's a long time to wait for results. And so for most people, they want to put something in the tank and they expect to see a nice change within a day or two. And you can't always do that. Some things you can, but a lot of things you can't. Everything takes time. You're undoing a problem that's been built up for a long time. You got to get under control. And then finally it is resolved and you realize, wow, that took a while. But certain things are a little quicker. So I wanted to show you that. I think that, those are my two topics from today. This wasn't a super long live stream. We're only 17 minutes in, and I've already run out of topic. But I'd be happy to answer some of your questions on here, because that is what we do. We do a topic, and then we jump into the question and answer. And usually I recommend you put in @MilesReef at the beginning of the question so I can find it more easily. But what I'm doing currently is I'm just scrolling down through the chat to see what is going on. Now, a lot of people currently today are in Florida for Reefapalooza, and everyone said, are you going? And I said, no, I'm here. I got a live stream. I got things to do. But Aquashella is next month. It's here in Dallas, and it's toward the end of the month. So if you haven't thought about coming, you should totally think about coming. And it's just such a fun event. I'll be speaking at that one, and I highly recommend it to you. I think that you will have a great experience. It's a 2-day event, and there is freshwater, there's saltwater, there is music, there's art, there's liquor, there's sodas. For those that don't drink liquor, there's it's just a fun event, and it's something I go to as frequently as I can. I'll be going to both Aquashellas this year. This one here in Dallas next month, and then there'll be another one this fall that will take place in Florida. So I'll be at those, and I would love to see you guys there. Let's see. Bill says, not first again. Nope, you were not first today, Bill. Sorry. That's okay. Danny Meek says, blankets of cyano in my aquarium at this time, trying to fight it by dosing phosphate and nitrate. You can try to bring those up, but you see, that's the other challenge. Is it cyano that you're looking at? Is it diatoms? Is it dinoflagellates? Because they all kind of have a similar look to themselves, and you need to know what you're dealing with specifically. Now, you said blanket, so I'm thinking you are dealing with cyanobacteria, and I don't think that adding nitrate or phosphate or lowering nitrate and lowering phosphate will change a blooming cyanobacteria. I would just say siphon out the big blankets, get it down to where you just have some on the sand bed and you got some on the rock, but most of it's been blown off and siphoned out of the tank. Treat the tank with a chemical. In a few days, get back to normal. Do your water change, turn on your skimmer, run some carbon, turn on the UV. All the things you like to run, you can turn them all back on now. They're ready to rock and roll. Okay. I had something interesting happen today. I was talking to a local hobbyist. DFW Mass had a quick event at the local fish store by my house at Frank's Tanks. It's a 1-hour meetup we do in one of the sponsored stores for DFW Mass. So this one happened right by my house. I ran down there. It spent about 30 minutes before I had to get back here in time for today's live stream. And I was talking with a friend of mine. His name is Van, and I said, "How's your tank?" And he said, "It always has a problem. No matter what I do, no matter how perfect my water is, I always have a problem." And I said, "Well, it might be time for you to do an ICP test." And he said, "Oh, I do those." And I said, "Okay, well, let's look at potassium." And so it took him a minute. He found the app on his phone, and he opened up the correct report, which was from March. And we looked, and his potassium was dangerously low. It was like 224 instead of being 400 or higher. And I said, "Well, there you go. There's your number one problem. That's why you're losing LPS corals." And he said, "Well, I've got other corals that are doing fine." I said, "I had the same thing. When my tank was super low in potassium, half my reef was completely unaffected. My fish were fine, and I was losing about half my corals. And I had to remind myself I wasn't losing everything. I was just losing a part of the reef I cared about, but there was still a whole bunch to still appreciate, to acknowledge it's not an absolute failure." And so we looked at the rest of his numbers, and his phosphate is insanely high. I don't know how. I've never seen a test that high. His iodine was crazy high, and magnesium and calcium were perfect. I was doubting his salinity number. I think that it's off. I think his refractometer is out of calibration. But then again, it could be that with that much potassium missing, it even throws off the salt, the salinity, and throws off other things. It could actually throw off other readings. But in the meantime, he now knows what he needs to correct. So if you are not someone that uses an ICP test from time to time, it's definitely a good investment to just get a bird's eye picture of your reef. If your reef is doing perfectly right now and there's nothing going wrong, this is a good time to do an ICP as well, because then you can see the entire report of all your trace elements, your minor elements, your major elements. You can see the whole thing, and you'll know this was my perfect month. And then when things are wrong and you send off a test, you could compare the bad results to the time when your tank was doing great, and you can see what changed. You'll literally be able to do a comparison and figure out what is way off from before. Like, okay, now I know what to correct. But in his case, he needs to double check his salinity because I think it's off. He needs to stop dosing iodide because it was raising his iodine like crazy. He needs to get his phosphates down significantly, and he needs to dose probably 2 liters of potassium into his reef to get it back to its normal level again. And once he does all that, I bet things are going to pick up, and in about 3 months, his tank is going to look great again. I do sell an ICP test from Reef Labs. It's on my website. So if you are looking for that, I would highly recommend it. I really like that company. I started using their kits last summer, I think it was, and I like the way they break it down on the website. It's just so easy to go through the results and look and see where you were last time. It actually looks at that. It also shows what it recommends, so you can have a good ballpark, and then you can use that information to decide what you want to do. And there'll be certain things they just do quick little descriptions of, like they'll say, this could be resolved with a water change. I mean, that's nice. And others are like, you need to dose this item because you don't have it, and you're literally lacking so much. So, some things can be fixed with just a water change, which is fine. But if you don't even know what the problem is, then doing water changes blindly may not resolve the issue. So sometimes we need to have someone do some work. And our normal tests of checking alkaline, calcium, magnesium, salinity, temperature, pH, nitrate, that's fine, but there's other things outside of that realm that we don't test for, and these guys can. So I really like Reef Labs. I've been really pleased with what they've... I've watched their website evolve during the last 12 months. It was a lot more basic in the beginning. It was good, but it wasn't good enough, and now it's way better. And I really do like it. So that's why I started selling their kits as of, I guess, 3 weeks ago. And you guys bought them all. So I ordered another 20 kits a couple days ago, and they're on the way. So by the time you place an order on my website, I should have more in stock, and I can get them out to you guys. And you can experience the same joy I experience when you see your results. And don't be scared of them. Don't say, oh, I don't want to know. It's not like going to the dentist and they say you've got a cavity. It's just finding out what it is so you can make the correction. And then you make the correction and your tank just gets better. So it's a good thing to do. Virginia says, I just upgraded to a 75-gallon and I'm praying for no cyano. It happens to all of us. Doesn't matter if you're new to the hobby or super experienced. If you're on top of your stuff, it like I said, it can be seasonal. It can just happen because it's time. and you just solve the problem. It's not going to be something that's going to ruin your tank. The nice thing is it doesn't wreck anything. It's not a murderous stuff like dinoflagellates. It definitely can smother some things if it covers it and you're not blowing it off, but it is something you can correct, and that is the point of today's topic. Hey, Conan. He says, long time no see. I know, it's been like minutes. Just saw you at the fish store. Triggerfish says, when are you going to start streaming on Rumble? You know, I only heard about Rumble like 2 days ago. I don't even know what it is, so I've got to go learn more. Let's see. Chris says Microbacter 7 will do the same thing. I haven't had that experience, but thank you for chiming in on that. And if that would be a solution, that'd be great. Speaking of Microbacter 7, that is something that I do stock. And I discovered recently that my bottles on the shelf had all expired in 2022. So if you have some Microbacter 7 in your possession, be sure to check your bottle and just see if it's still good or not. This is not a forever element. This is something you're going to need to make sure it's still good or replace it with a fresh bottle. And so I did that. I replaced all the ones in my shop. I had Microbacter Clean and Microbacter 7, and both had expired, and I pulled them off the shelf. They're going to go in the trash. But be sure that you're using current stuff so you're not just pouring in stuff that's no longer good. I'm not sure how to say this. Coquil1per. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, I use a natural denitrifier for my nitrate, and they're at 0.20 ppm. 0.2! That is super low. That is less than 1 ppm. Good for you. It is a little bit low, but I'm glad you've got something that's working for you. Tom says you could listen to me whine about dinoflagellates. That is not a fun topic. Thomas, I'm sorry to hear that you had a fish jump from your tank, and you have a cover for your tank. Surprised it got out. Havo says, I will book my tickets from Belfast, Northern Ireland. So you'll be here in time then if you book your flight now. John Wright is here from England. He says he's late. Usually I'm late. That's my line. Don't steal my line. Ryan says, I can't point out why, but I've had corals that wouldn't open or just looked rough. Treating for cyano fixed the problem, so I suspect it was bacterial in nature and close enough in relation. I've had that exact experience. I had a specific hammer coral in my tank, pink hammer. They were very small heads, and the coral just didn't look good, but everything else in the tank looked fine. And I just had this weird thought, what if there's cyano living inside the mouth of those hammers? So I treated the tank, and then a few days later, I got my skimmer operational again, and the hammer completely opened up and looked healthy again. It was the craziest thing. I don't even know how my brain went to that potential thought, but that was what I did back then. And it was only a one-time thing, but I did it once, and it worked, and it was really neat. By the way, Ryan, I've not forgotten about you. You were on my build list. I just have to figure out the layouts on the sheets, so I'm going to start making your containers that you requested. Oh no. Virginia says, I have Reefapalooza in my hometown and I can't go because of migraine days yesterday and today. I am so sorry to hear that. I think there's going to be another Reefapalooza tomorrow. So it's Saturday and Sunday. So hopefully you'll feel better and you can go. Rafa says, could you bring me some acros to Wamas next month? I won't be bringing any corals with me on the plane. But I would think there's a ton of club members in your club with corals, and you can get some locally. Thomas says, have you tried Fritz Aquatics Clarifier? The water clears quickly from cloudy, hazy for saltwater and freshwater. We started using it at work in our tanks, and after the water changes, it's good stuff. No, I haven't found the need for that. I don't tend to have cloudy water. Tom says Triton is adding fluorine to their analysis within the next couple of weeks. I saw that announcement. That's true. He says it might be useful. I remember one of the German marine companies talking about that in halogen imbalances and dinos. Let's see. Jeremy, thank you very much for saying that. I am very happy with the way my reef looks lately. It's just looking super pretty here. Let me get out of the way for a minute so you can enjoy that. Austin says, do you have any experience with snake polyps? I picked up a few at the local fish store, and they've opened up at first. However, they've stopped opening and still have their color. I have one snake polyp in my possession in my frag tank, and it has been there for a year, and it's still the same one. It's done nothing special. So I don't have any advice for you. Perhaps look at your fish and see if anyone is nipping at that snake polyp by any chance. It could be that you're having something's picking at it, whether it's shrimp or fish or hermits or something. But no, I don't have any. I don't have any advice. You might have to Google that one, see if there's anything out there on the web that talks about what they need. But I have no brain knowledge about that. Nothing in my brain about it. Rick says, my tank is 4.5 years old, and I always have a few very small patches of cyano that blow off easily. I've come to accept it's going to be in the tank, and I just manage it. Is that wrong? It's not wrong, but if you just want to treat the tank and get rid of it, you totally can. It doesn't have to be there. And like I said, I treated my tank a couple of years ago when there was hints of it. And currently, right now, my refugium, it's kind of there, and I'm not really happy at seeing it down there. But the reef itself, I'm not seeing any visibility of it, so I haven't done anything. But if it migrates into the reef a little bit, I will then treat the big tank for it as well, just like I did Caitlin's reef. Spencer says, what is your preferred potassium additive? I've used 2 different ones so far. They both worked equally great. The one that I used first was Fauna Marin's Elementals K, K being for potassium. They have a whole line of elementals, and the one I needed was K. And then the other one I started using, because I'm already using Reef Blueprint Trace Elements, they sell the large, it's 1,003 milliliters. It's kind of funny, it's not 1,000, it's 1,003 milliliters of potassium, and that cost $13. And I was like, yeah, no problem. I ordered another bottle when I ordered all those ICP test kits for y'all. So in the dosing of potassium, I don't find it to be extremely difficult. I find it to be actually very simple. You have different ways of doing it. You can pour it in manually. At first, when I was first doing it, my tank was so deficit in it. I was literally 50% of what my tank needed to be. I wanted to inject the tank with a lot. I hooked up to a dosing pump because it was slower than me pouring it in. And I put in 500 milliliters on the first day and 500 the next day, and the bottle was empty. And then the next bottle I hooked up, I set it up to 200 milliliters a day for 5 days. And then when I put the third liter on the dosing pump, I did 100 milliliters a day for 10 days until the bottle was empty. And after 3 liters, my 450-gallon system was completely back to around 430 ppm of potassium, and my tank was already looking better. You could see the tank improve just from adding the potassium. So currently, when I noticed my numbers had dropped again, I guess stuff's soaking it up and loving it, I went ahead and I put in 100 milliliters a day. Now I didn't do the dosing pump this time. Instead, I took a red Solo cup, the kind you do for beer pong. I filled it up with RO water. I poured in 100 milliliters of potassium into that cup. And then I took that cup and went to my overflow box and just poured it in the overflow box to go straight down the drain, mix with all the water, the salt water, go through the sump and pump back into the tank. And I just did that once a day for 10 days. And that was done. Just brought the potassium right back up where it belonged. And so that's why I said I ordered another bottle, so I keep it on hand. I don't want to be found without potassium in my possession. It is the one that keeps getting away from me. Lincoln says 0 something in zinc. I don't know what the first... Oh, nickel. Nickel, got it. 0 nickel and zinc. Those are metals. They are... I forget what number they're supposed to be. Let me look at my report. Give me a second here. Or actually, I could look at my ICP results. Please stand by. Because I'm trying to remember I keep track of all my results in a spreadsheet. And looking for nickel. Nickel should be either, if you're using ICP analysis, they basically recommend 5 parts per billion. If you're using Reef Labs, they recommend 0.005 mech per liter. And mine tends to be about, it tends to almost always be around 0.024. So I'm up slightly higher than what they recommend. And then zinc, ICP analysis recommended 20 parts per billion, where Reef Labs recommended 0.04 mech per liter. And mine tends to be either not detected, or it's 0.001, 0.002, 0.003. So it's super low. Now I am dosing MT from Reef Labs, and that has zinc in it. I don't know if it has nickel in it. I can't remember. But having, the ocean has everything balanced perfectly. That's why things live in there so well. So we are trying to mimic the ocean as best we can. And I realize there's different oceans, but we are trying to have a general recommended area. That's why the ICP companies can give you, Triton can give you a recommendation, ICP analysis, Reef Labs. These different companies can tell you what would be suitable for the aquarium and what to shoot for. So if you are deficient in something, or if you're overabundant in something, you can figure out how to resolve that. And this is one thing that does exist. It shouldn't be undetectable. There's other things we want to be non-detectable. We don't want any bismuth. We don't want any cadmium. Cesium, we'd like to have a little bit, but not much. We want iron, but we don't want lead. There's just certain things that we do and don't want. So I would say in your case, if they are a little bit low, it's possible that they will come up through water changes. But I don't believe you have to physically dose nickel or zinc. I don't think that's something that we do. Havo says, have you tried Kalkwasser yet? I haven't. My reef is looking great, and I just don't see any reason to mess with it. Michael says, when he had cyan on his tank, he used MB7 and it didn't work. Also, years ago, when it first came out, Live Rock Enhanced came out, I had a theory that it could possibly work on cyano, and it did. It's a little different than using something like ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX, but it did remove the cyano. But that wouldn't be my go-to. My go-to would be ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX. Those two do the job, and that's why I recommend them. But I had a thought that Live Rock Enhanced would be a good bacteria that consumes some of the stuff the cyanobacteria is consuming, and it would rob it of whatever it is, and it would weaken it, and it did. So it worked in my frag system. It just eliminated it. And then I was telling people this might actually work on dinoflagellates, but I didn't know for sure, and I don't have any to test with, so I just told people if you have it, you might try this and see what happens. And the results were spotty. It seemed like 50% said yes, it worked, and others said it didn't work for them at all. So it could be how it was dosed, how frequently it was dosed, or it wasn't dosed enough. I don't know. But there's an entire dinoflagellate support group on Facebook that's been around for years, and they've been helping people identify the type of dinoflagellates they have and then giving them a course of treatment to how to resolve it. So I would just say go to that group if you do have dinos and let them help you. Triggerfish says, you haven't mentioned the frag tank in a while. How's the frag tank doing? It's just sitting there waiting for me to rip it out of the wall and replace it with a new one. John says, we found a mantis shrimp yesterday. We're not sure if it needs to be removed or not. We've lost some fish that appear to be perfectly healthy and was thinking the mantis could be the cause. It's possible. What color was the mantis? Was it a green one? Was it small? Those are common hitchhikers that can come in through used live rock or even from new live rock from the ocean. And yeah, we do want to remove mantis shrimp from our aquarium because they are meat eaters and they will kill things to eat them, whether it's snails, small fish, it can happen. He says, I know it's a bit hard to say my nickname here. My name is Nestor. Well, Ko-Kwi-One-Per doesn't sound like Nestor to me, so thank you for giving me that. I appreciate it. He said, I've been following you for years and years, I think as far back as 2005, and love your reef. Well, thank you very much. Very nice to meet you, Nestor. That's got to stand for something, though. And I see your profile pic. Military. Austin says, does anyone else use anything other than Marco rock? I'm using rock currently from Southwest Florida that's on a lot of fossilized shells and tube worms that I found on the beach. Well, I use live rock from Florida, and I like it. I put live rock in Caitlin's tank last year, and it was covered in all kinds of cool things. And I have zero regrets putting that in my tank, and the tank's so pretty. And by the way, I showed you guys that after picture of the, I'll show it to you again, because here it is. Let me get out of the way. Where is it? Let me do this. Why do things just vanish? Where is it? All right, it just evaporated. Let me, oh, I know, because it went on that other frame. Hang on. Give me a second. I know you're looking at a black screen. Please stand by. I need to find that picture. So this picture here, if this is the right one, this looks like the right one, was Caitlin's reef as of 20 minutes ago. I ran over there, flipped the light on, and took that picture. It is looking so clean that I just keep staring at it in wonder. I mean, the tank just looks amazing. I'm very happy with how it looks, and I'm so glad I treated the tank. I have zero regrets. Absolutely zero. Okay, let's see what the next question is. Will says, does ChemiClean expire? I have some from 5 years ago, and it doesn't have an expiration date. I would hazard a guess and say, yes, it's probably not forever. I had a red Cyano RX box that I found in my fish room, but when I had to treat Caitlin's tank, I just threw it away and got a new one off the peg because I haven't used it in so long. The one I found was super old. I wouldn't even know when I originally used it, but because of where it was stashed away, it was ancient. It wasn't the one I used 2 years ago. So I used a brand new box. And I still have like 90% of this box left because I only treated a 27-gallon tank. And like I said, this thing treats 400 gallons. So I got plenty. I can go ahead and do my reef with what's left in this bottle if I wanted to. But ChemiClean also comes in a liquid form, or it did. And I remember, because I used it once or twice a year, and I never cared. I just did it because it solved the problem. And if the tank had cyano, I treated the tank. And if it came and I had a problem, I treated it, got rid of it. And I never thought it was I never thought it was cheating or detrimental to my tank. I never saw any negative side effects. My reef just grew and became more and more beautiful and always looked good because I never let that stuff get out of control. I never let it take hold and stick around and become a nightmare. But I remember there was one time, probably in the early 2000s, where I had a really bad strain that would not go away. And I think I emailed the company like 2 or 3 times and it just, got no reply back. And I was asking, can I use it at 200% strength? Or is that dangerous? Because using the regular dose didn't affect the cyano at all. And since I never got a reply back, I finally just said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I did. I dosed double strength in my tank, and it did get rid of the cyano. So, and I didn't lose anything. And then I wanted to try the liquid form because you just count drops. Guys, I love counting drops. And I did it, and it worked fine too. So, I mean, whichever one works would be fine. But if you have something that's pretty old, several years old, it probably would be smarter to get a fresh kit or a fresh pack and not take a chance with it. Thomas says, I absolutely love the Nero 5 wave pumps. Thanks again. He just ordered them for me this week, and I shipped them out the next day. He says, awesome package, like always, 5 stars. Thank you very much for saying all that. That's nice. And he says, after adjusting the lights, the corals, and the bubble tip anemone are doing amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're liking your tank more. More flow, good lighting, that's key for a happy reef. Tom says, you can mix your own potassium chloride with potassium sulfate at a 7-to-1 ratio. I was actually, when I was at Fritz, I said I need some potassium, and they only have the potassium they put in the salt mix. They don't have bottles of it or bags of it or anything, and they said it would actually be difficult to get you that. So, to buy a bottle of it and make my, buy a bottle just ready to go off the shelf doesn't bother me because I don't need it nonstop every single day for the rest of my life. But if I was having to, if this was my regular every single month, got a dose like magnesium, I probably wouldn't mix my own up with with the two powders, with the chloride and the sulfate. Jeremy says, I just started biopellets with Microbacter 7. I have to dose 20 milliliters a day for a month, and I'm working out of town. What do you think about MB7 and a dosing pump? Instructions are pretty cautious about contamination. I do not know if that is how you need to use it. And I don't know people that use it with a dosing pump. I just don't physically know that. It seems like the people that need it just, they're putting it in manually. But when I was doing biopellets, I was putting in the Microbacter 7 once a week. I wasn't doing it daily. So could it work with a dosing pump? Sending it into is this going into the reef or is this going into the reactor? You might reach out to Brightwell and talk to them directly. Maybe they have some advice. Michael says, I have a little bit of cyano in my refugium now. I don't see any in my reef. Should I treat? I tried Microbacter 7. It didn't work. You can if you want, or you can just hold out until it actually migrates up to the reef. That's just think of it this way. The less there is in the system, the easier it is to solve the problem. And the more the problem is present, the more effort involved in resolving it. I'm reading the next one. Cody says, do you have any experience with sea hares for hair algae? Back in the day, our club had a sea hare that we named Rerun. It's such a good nickname. And he would go from tank to tank to tank because of hair algae. So because when you have a tank full of hair algae and you put in a sea hare, it's going to eat it like crazy, and then it's going to run out of food and it will die. So instead, what you would do is you would tell the next person in line, come get Rerun, and that way it would go from tank to tank. And it went for several tanks. I don't know how it ended. Invariably, probably someone didn't send it to the next tank, and perhaps it died. That would be my guess. But they definitely work. But then after that, you got to find a way to feed them or get them back to the fish store for someone else to use them. Bob says, what frozen foods do you use in the various tanks? I use the same batch of food every single day. So I have a small container. Nothing nearby is good enough to show you, but it physically is one of those little tiny cups that had fruit in it or applesauce that you give to kids. So I saved those little cups a long time ago, and I've been using them as feeding cups ever since. And I put in some Rod's food. I put in some mini mices from, why do I never remember their name? Might be San Francisco Bay. And then I put in PE mysis, and I put in some polyp poppers from Rod's Food. And I put those 4 frozens into the bowl. I thaw them with some tank water. 20 minutes later, I can put them in all the tanks. And everyone gets the same food every single day. And I've been doing that forever. Just forever. It's my nightly routine. I have my watch actually tell me, feed the fish at 10 o'clock. And then it reminds me every 9 minutes until I get the job done. And it's really good that I did that reminder, because there were so many times where I would just get caught up in whatever I'm doing, and next thing I know, the lights are turning off and I haven't fed the fish yet. So I set up that reminder. Actually, Caitlin set it up years ago, and I finally transferred that information to my own phone to remind me daily to feed my fish. And that has worked really well. So I'm using 4 different flavors of fish food every single night, mixed up, thawed, and that way I can use a pipette and I can squirt 2 squirts into Caitlin's reef. I put in 3 into the frag tank for the clowns in there, and I put in 12 to 14 pipettes into the anemone cube clownfish temporary setup, and then the bulk of the food gets dumped into the reef. I pour it along the back, and I on both ends of the tanks because the tank's 7 feet long, and so that food gets blown around by all the vortex and it goes everywhere, and it looks like a snowstorm in the tank briefly, and then after a couple minutes, it's all gone and it's in the bellies of everything. Mr. Reefbuster says, I have bubble algae that won't go away. What chemical and animal can I use to get rid of it? The animal would be an emerald crab, or a bunch of them, and the chemical would be FluxRx, used at triple strength. And it just does the job. It just gets rid of it. It's really nice. It weakens it, and it may not just make it evaporate, but it'll be much easier to pull it off the rocks and off your overflows and off your lock line and wherever it is, and it will just weaken it and it'll just die off. So, and that was something they didn't know originally. When Reflux came out, people were using it to get rid of hair algae and using double strength to get rid of bryopsis. And then there was this rumor going around that if you use it at triple strength, they'll get rid of Valonia, and it's true. So you can do that if you want. Thomas says, my tank is very beautiful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Austin says, what a lucky fish living in a tank that clean. Our tank should look clean. Matter of fact, I just saw a thread a couple days ago. It was in the Aquaforest group, and the guy had posted a bunch of pictures. He showed a picture of the tank just with an algae film on the glass. And then, he cleaned the glass, and then you could see the reef, and they did a bunch of close-ups. And I was thinking, with a tank that pretty, why is your glass ever dirty? I mean, I understand why it happens. Or you traveled, you're out of town, you're working all day, you get home, the lights are already off. But yeah, his tank was beautiful. I'm glad he cleaned the glass. John says, how come you have subtitles on the live stream? It's a great idea. Actually, it's a default thing that YouTube does. It's really neat. It just figures it out and puts them on the screen automatically. It's pretty impressive. Hillbilly Reefer says, do you have multiple types of algae in your refugium, and what types do you have? I still have feather caulerpa, and actually it's looking a little bit less than ideal. I'm going to have to figure out what's going on. I'm wondering if the 460 is kind of affecting them. I've also had to dose my tank with iron, and the tank has been low in iron for some time, and maybe getting more iron into the system will help that plant turn around. But in my quest to lower my nitrate, I may have weakened my macroalgae that I've had going for so long. Just Another Reefer says, I am about to get a Red Sea Reefer 425 XL. Would love a blonde Nasso. Would it be okay or no? Wouldn't want it to suffer if the tank wasn't big enough. I don't know how many liters that is or how many gallons that is. Sorry, is that like 100 gallons? It sounds like a small tank to me, even though it's called XL. But if you could tell me, then I can maybe address your question. But in theory, an aquarium that is 6 feet long is better for tangs than one that is smaller. Of course, if you get a little tiny tang, a little juvenile, you have some time to appreciate and let it grow, and then you can upgrade to a larger tank later. My 400-gallon, you can see Spock right there next to me right now. And this tank is nothing to her. If she wants to move fast, in the blink of an eye, she can be from one end of the tank to the other just with a twitch of the tail. But she's been with me a super long time, and she knows she's not getting a bigger tank, and she's just putting up with it. She's accepting what I've given her. Michael says, have you heard they came out with the Nero 7? Yes, and I placed an order to put them in my shop for anyone that needs them. I ordered 4 of them, so if you guys are looking for one, you'd like to buy one from milasreef.com, I'd appreciate it. As soon as I get the product in stock, I'll put it on the website. Jeremy says, I would be dosing the Microbacter 7 directly into the sump, not into the biopellet reactor. My controller would turn off the skimmer for 4 hours, which is good. The bottle says to dose 2 milliliters per 25 gallons, probably per day for the initial month. Okay. And the tank is 4 years old. Yeah, I mean, I think you could dose it in the tank, into the sump successfully with what you were describing. I don't think you'll have a problem with pollution getting into it unless the tubing is submerged in the salt water. Then you could have something occur with bacteria back siphoning. But if it's trickling into the system or trickling into the tank itself, that might be okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So the 425 is a 4x2x2, so it's a 120-gallon tank. I've seen tanks, a 120-gallon tank. I prefer smaller ones, like the Cole. That would be a better one than the Nasso. The Nasso becomes a big fish, and it lives 35 years. So I would hold off on that one for now if I were you. John says, have you watched the latest Reef Bum's video? Reef Bum. I said that incorrectly. Reef Bum's latest video with Thule. No, I haven't. He says it was completely over my head, and I think Keith was confused too. No, I haven't seen it yet. Nestor says, what was the product you showed us to lower your nitrate? Fritz Zyme 460. So this one is made for salt water. It says right here in very small font. It says for salt water, reef safe. And I'll just read what it says. Reduces and simplifies maintenance, promotes a clean, clear, healthy aquarium, sludge elimination, bacteria rapidly digest waste, naturally reduces odors. And then it says it's a concentrated formulation of saltwater-specific strains of sludge-removing bacteria. Using Fritz Zyme 460 twice monthly as part of a regular maintenance program can help keep aquariums clear of sludge and organic pollutants, including fish waste, leftover food, and other decaying organic matter. And then you have to shake it well before you use it. And like I said, on here it says use every 2 weeks. But because my nitrate was so high, I did it weekly. And so my skimmer was actually off 2 days a week. So in the last month, the skimmer was off for 8 days, which is unusual for me. My skimmer's always running. But I literally saw the difference, and I was very impressed. So I'm not trying to shoot for super low nitrate. I just want to get under 20. And maybe this last dose will have done it. And then hopefully it'll stay down there where it belongs, and it won't just creep back up like it did last summer when it just shot up to 80 for no good reason. It was super annoying. Chaz says, how long do you run your display tank lights per day? Well, they start off super low. I mean, obviously 0 is off. So at 11:30 a.m., they start to wake up. And then I think it's half an hour or so to an hour, it goes up to 23%. And then it goes for a while, for a couple hours, to about 52% or some random number I picked. And then for 3 hours a day, my lights are at 80%. And then it goes back down to that 52%, and then it goes back down to 23%, and then finally it goes to pitch darkness. And so that clock is 11:30 to 11:30, so to speak. So it kind of is a 12-hour period, but it's so dim in the beginning and end, you lop off a couple of hours easily, which gets you down to a 10-hour day. And then I have 3 hours of what I call high noon when it's getting 80% light. And that has worked out beautifully, and my corals are very happy and growing and getting too big and killing each other. So it just is what it is, but it's worked really well. So my schedule is available in Apex Fusion. If you're an Apex user, you can literally look up the schemes, and you can find Milov's as the second most popular choice, and you can pop that into your light if you have the Sky, and just adjust the times to the schedule you like. Tom says I need to order me a Peacemaker. That would be great. I have people order them. I have 2 styles on my website. One style is made for rimless aquariums. It can fit glass up to 7/8 of an inch thick. So pretty much fits any tank. So any tank, 3/8 to 3/4 of an inch, hangs on there beautifully. And then I make one that's made for tanks that have trim on them or that have Euro bracing the glass frame, and it would rest on the top of the Euro bracing so it can't fall into the tank. And that one, I just need to know the total length it needs to be so it hangs properly. And so those are both available on the website. I did some water testing this week, but this is not today's. So Caitlin's Reef, who has been, this tank was set up in late May of last year. So we're in month 11, right? And nitrates were 3, phosphate was 0.25, Temperature was 76.4, pH was 8.3, alkalinity was 7, calcium was 430, magnesium was 1450, salinity was 1.026. So the tank has done very well considering it's had nothing as a type of dose. It's just had water changes for the last year. The recent addition of the Shark Pro from Sicce completely made the water look much better. I'm very impressed with it. It just has these little blue sponges inside the box that hangs underneath, and I take that thing off once a week, take the sponges out, rinse them out, put them back in. But there's a compartment in the dead center between the two skinny sponges, so right now it's 3 sponges. But if I take those two, and if I take out the big one in the middle and just keep the 2 skinny ones on the side, I could put carbon in the center to run carbon on the tank. If I wanted to run something like Phosphate RX on that little tank, I would literally have to create something that would have a power head and a 10 micron filter sock, because that tank has no skimmer, no canister filter, no anything that can trap the flocculant. But since the phosphate is only 0.25, even after 11 months of me just feeding it every day, I'm not too worried about it. And the algae that's in there is intentionally in there, so I'm not shooting for a low algae tank. I'm just shooting for a pretty tank with a pretty fish, and it's been going quite well. I need to go in there and kind of remove some Valonia, and I still have that one Aptasia I never killed in the very back. I tried to get it, and it retracted, and I just ignored it. And that darn thing is still in the back of my tank, just living its best life, and I need to flip that rock over so the Aptasia faces up, cover it in F Aptasia, and solve that before it becomes 2. Because right now the tank only has that one Aptasia, and I want it gone. And then my own reef, salinity was 1.025, temperature was 76.4, pH was 8.06, so basically 8.1. ORP was 299, alkalinity was 8.5, phosphate was 0.5, nitrates were 20, magnesium was 1500, and calcium was 420. So my magnesium's too high, and my little jug of magnesium has just about run out, so I won't fill that up for a couple of weeks. And phosphate was up, so yesterday I put in 125 drops of Phosphate RX to bring it down. And when I test again, I'll see where my numbers are. But this was what I took about 5 days ago. So it's time for some fresh testing. So that's where we should wrap this up. We should say that it's time for Water Test Saturday, because this is what we do. Every Saturday we test our water, find out what the parameters are so we can make corrections to keep the livestock not only healthy but thriving. I would highly recommend that you get in the habit of doing this every single Saturday. I don't care if you want to do it on Sundays or Tuesdays or whatever, but pick a day and do it every single week like clockwork. All those fish stores you like to go in and shop at, I guarantee you they're testing their water daily. You only have to test yours once a week. So if you're doing that, you are doing something good for your tank. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that is to measure alkalinity and calcium, magnesium, nitrate, phosphate, temperature, salinity. We want to know what these things are, and then from time to time the ICP test to make sure that nothing is getting away from you, or give you a reason to dose something else like trace elements, or if you want to put in something like the Prodibio line. These are all things you can put in your tank, but without testing, how do you know what they're doing? So it's really important to know these things, and so I always recommend that. And Caitlin said that water tests save lives, and she's not wrong. I saw another question here. Oh, Daniel says, I've been fighting hair algae in my 24-gallon for the last year after picking every week. Yep. And adding more cleanup crew. It still keeps coming back. I've considered Flux RX, but I'm concerned I may lose some coral. Flux RX doesn't kill coral. That's the nice thing. It is kind of a reef-safe treatment. It's fluconazole, and Flux RX is in a... It's sort of like this one here. So you'll get a little jar with powder inside of it, and it comes with a little tiny spoon, and you would just put in how many spoons it says to put in the tank. The other stuff that was on the market, the Reef Flux, that was the other brand that came out, was a bunch of capsules, and you had to open each capsule, and you had to count the capsules. This one is just a jar of powder, and this comes in 3 different sizes. So the smallest Flux RX that I sell on my website is for a 100-gallon tank, so that means you'd have enough to treat your 24-gallon tank 4 times, I would say. And it totally will get rid of your hair algae. the way the instructions work. I remembered it differently than when I read the instructions, but I thought you have to turn off your skimmer for a week and let it work its magic, and then after about 3 weeks, the algae will be gone. But I believe the instructions said, I don't have it handy, I think you leave the skimmer off for 3 days, and then you resume skimming. And at that point, it still will work its way through the system, and your algae will die off. If you have macroalgae in a refugium, it'll kill that too. So you need to be aware you'll have to get some new algae for that area or you have to remove it completely, put in something else, a small bucket with an air stone, I guess, for circulation, because a power head would get clogged up with algae, right? So an air stone would be a safe way to keep the water tumbling, maybe a small heater so it doesn't get too cold. And that way when you're done with your treatment and you've done a water change and you got the chemical out of the system, you can put the macroalgae back. But yeah, FluxRx will definitely get rid of your hair algae problem in your 24-gallon. And then hopefully your cleanup crew will stay on top of any new stuff that's sprouting off the rockwork. Cussa Reef says, do you use the Apex salinity probe? I have one. I kind of ignore it. I don't tend to believe it. And right now it's not being very accurate. Let me see what it says at the moment, because it's been wrong for a while. It says my salinity is at 32.5 ppt, and I think my tank's 34. So it's close, but it's not something I rely on. John says, I've thought about getting cleaner wrasse, and I've seen lots of videos saying they don't live long. I see you have one. What's your opinion? Funny story. I'm glad you asked that. So when I introduced that, I think I talked about it on a live stream, I think, on this channel, and I said, listen, guys, I'm trying out this cleaner wrasse, but they don't live long. And almost everyone in that live stream said, I have one. I've had it for years. My fish didn't know it's supposed to be dead now. And I felt like such an idiot. But for so long, when we tried to keep cleaner wrasses, they just didn't do well. And so I've been avoiding them for many, many years. And it turns out a lot of people, whether they're new in the hobby or experienced, had cleaner wrasses and they were doing fine. And the one I put in that live stream, I still have to this day. And it follows the fish around constantly. And it definitely goes after the nori. And it goes after the frozen food. I was watching it last night. It was chowing down on some PE mysis. So it's a nice fish to have in the tank. Now, there's a couple different kinds. The one I have, I think, is from Indonesia. The other one that's so much prettier than what I have comes from Hawaii, but I don't believe you can get the Hawaiian one anymore because the Hawaiian fishery was closed. So I wouldn't know where you'd get it, but it is a prettier one if you happen to stumble on one. Annie's Reef says, I'm planning to upgrade from a 3-foot 100-gallon SPS tank to a 6-foot. Should I go 6 by 2 by 2, or should I go by 6 by 2 by 2.5? As I have walls on 2 sides of the tank, should I have the overflow on the back or on the side? Well, if you have the walls on the 2 sides, I don't know if you mean the 2 opposite sides or it's in a corner, but ideally you want to put the overflow box near a wall. So if you have, like if the tank is in a window scenario where you're going to look through it, like through into another room, you'd put your overflows on the ends. So that way the water's flowing to the ends, but your view is beautiful from both sides. If you put it in plain view, it's an eyesore. So you would have to decide what works best for you. Now, when it came to the sizes, I mean, you have choices, like you said. I like a 2.5-foot tall tank, a 30-inch tank. I like that. But it's not 30 inches of water. You've got the glass on the bottom, you got the trim on the top, you've got the sand bed that raises it up. You end up with like 24 inches, 25 inches of water anyway. And even then, you're going to need tongs to reach certain things with a slightly taller tank. A 2-foot tank, you can definitely reach the bottom more easily for maintenance and cleanup. Tom says, is that tank 36 inches front to back? Yes. My tank is 84 inches long, or 7 feet, by 36 inches front to back, and it's 30 inches tall. And this tank is going to be 10 years old in November. Michael says, I have a hammer coral where the polyp came off the skeleton, and it's living on the sand. Can it regrow a skeleton? Yes, it can. It's possible. It's not guaranteed. It almost needs to be in like a mushroom cage where it can be protected, and that way it can kind of sit there and not be blown around the tank, and it could form a calcareous base and reestablish itself. If you have a mushroom box of some kind, or if you could find, I don't know if they even sell them anymore. Back in the day, you could buy strawberries in a basket. Now strawberries are in like a plastic clamshell looking thing. But those baskets had a lot of holes in the side, and they were great in aquariums for putting rubble and things like what you have, or mushrooms. But there's companies like P&W out of Seattle. They make these little shroom boxes, and so you can get one of those to put your polyp in. And if you can't do that, you could take a solo cup, the drinking cup, like I said, for beer pong, and you could cut off like the bottom half of the cup and keep the top circle and set that down into the sand a little bit and put the polyp in the middle so it kind of corrals it. Maybe you'll get lucky and you'll stay in there and it won't fluff up and float out. It's a possibility. Plano Beaver says, I'm on the hunt for some high light, low flow corals for my tank. It's a 10-gallon nano, so any flow other than the return pump destroys my euphilia. High light, low flow. I can't think of anything. Everything that's high light is usually SPS, and they like high flow, and you're talking about low flow. Now, acans could handle a lot of light and handle minimal flow. Recordia probably could do well in that scenario as well. So there's a couple choices that might be a nice addition to your tank, in addition to the euphilia that you have. That survived. Those are my two thoughts. I don't know. That's all I got. Well, guys, we've been going for over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I do want to get some more things done. But hang on. I see another question rolled in. But I appreciate you guys tuning in each week. Next weekend, I will not be doing a live stream, just so you know, because I will be in Austin. G-Reef says, I have a quick question. I have 2 sets of tests and give me such different results. I have the Salifert, alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, and then I run the Hanna checker, and the numbers are worse. The example is Salifert is measuring alkalinity at 8.0, and Hanna is measuring at 6.8. I believe the Hanna checker for calcium is kind of notoriously difficult to use, so that number might be inaccurate. That's my guess. I haven't used it. I remember when the first time I got the kit and I opened it up, I was kind of overwhelmed with what I had to do, and I didn't use it. So I have no personal experience with it. I have used the alkalinity checker, worked fine. I used the phosphate checker, worked fine if you did not let the time get away from you, because it would turn itself off if you weren't paying attention. Super annoying. But if you had your packets cut open and ready to rock and roll and you stayed there and babysat the thing, it worked fine for me. But I did not use it for calcium. It was too overwhelming. Keith says, is it safe to use ChemiClean if I have an algae scrubber? Yes. Yeah, it'd be totally fine. The algae scrubber probably will benefit from it. You'll have less slime on the screen. All right, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here because there's no more question. Perfect time to escape. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys online. Remember, you can always talk to me on Club Mila's Reef on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Mila's Reef. And, as I roll out more little tiny videos for Reef Diary, you'll get little peeks into my system and see what's going on. Other than that, I got nothing more. Bye.